of course, if I could see a PREMA driver win or an Alpine driver win, those would be my first picks, I suppose.
You're not an F1 driver yet, but you've got the F1 political answers down to a T. Hello and welcome to the F1 Feeder Series podcast, your guide to keeping up to date on everything in the junior single-seater world. I'm your host, Jim Kimberley, and the season hasn't even started, yet we've already peaked with Feeder Series guests. In the Feeder Series world, you cannot get higher than the Formula 2 champion, and that is exactly who is joining us this week. Ladies and gentlemen, it's only bloody Oscar Piastri. Welcome to the podcast, Oscar. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, guys. I am doing great, thank you.
And how's your preparation for making it 4 titles in a row by becoming the 2022 champion of sitting on the couch? Or have you had some phone calls from Gunther Steiner to disrupt those plans?
My couch sitting plans are looking good. I have a very comfy couch here next to me. But yeah, obviously a lot going on in the F1 world at the moment. So yeah, I guess it's showing its true craziness at the moment still. So yeah, we will see.
Lots of plans to, well, we'll see. Maybe the champion of something else, hopefully. But we'll talk about that later. And as ever, I'm also joined by F1 Feeder Series founder Floris Visman. Floris, we've somehow snagged the best we can get. How do you feel about the podcast only going downhill from this point before the season's even started?
Yeah, it's a tough moment. I'm actually crying from the inside, and it's not only because of the cracked rib I got from karting yesterday. So it's double sour for me.
Well, at least Oscar can do some sort of work by teaching you how to not crash in karting. And Tyler, welcome back to the podcast. It was all Formula Regional Asia and all the stuff in the Middle East last time you were on. Not so now, pre-season testing finally underway. How good was it to see the F2 cars back in action?
I mean, everything moves so quickly. When you're covering motorsport, it just moves from one series to the next, especially when you're covering winter series. But it's lovely to see Formula 2 cars back on track. Bahrain, we know how quick the cars are around there. So it was good to see everyone get back up to speed, even though there was a small sandstorm getting in the way. But yeah, we'll probably talk about that a bit. But yeah, and I think last time I saw Oscar was in Abu Dhabi, so he wasn't even champion yet. So yeah, it moves very quickly.
It does indeed. The bitter taste of the off-season kind of feels like it's going away with all the things ramping up at the moment. So, as you said, Tyler, we've had Formula 2 and Formula 3 back on track, doing pre-season testing in Bahrain, and we're going to delve into that. And as you may expect, we've got 1 or 2 questions from the mountain sent in by all of you once you heard that Oscar was joining us that we're going to have to ask you. But first, a quick reminder to like, comment and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're old school and listening to the audio only version, please leave a review on whatever podcast platform you're using. As Oscar joining us proves, it really does help us out. So there's only one place, unfortunately, Oscar, to start. A Haas seat becomes available unexpectedly. How many phone calls and emails were sent by your team over the weekend trying to get you into that seat?
I have no idea. Yeah, I mean, even if I did know, which I don't, honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell you anyway. So who knows? Obviously, the season is very close. And, the next test for F1 is at the end of this week. So, yeah, obviously, Pietro's doing the test. And, yeah, I think that says quite a lot, I would say. But, yeah, so it's been a busy time.
Has it been so busy for you this season compared to others without having to jump in a car? Or has this been quite, not welcome, obviously it's not welcome, but quite a welcome break in some regards?
I would say it's still been busy. It's just been busy in a very different kind of regard, I guess. There's been a lot more organisation and, firstly, getting to know a new team. Because a lot of the traveling and organizational stuff for my whole career, and especially for the last 2 years, has been with the teams I've been racing with. So PREMA for the last 2 years. So it's a change of people for this year. So getting to know everybody at Alpine, and there's a lot of people to get to know at any F1 team. So that side of things has been quite busy. I did a test day in Paul Ricard. When was that? A few weeks ago now. In the RS18. So I've already done a little bit of driving this year. So it's been busy from, I guess, an organizational point of view and just, organizing what my year is going to look like. But I guess kind of unfortunately the nature of this year, there's not much sort of preparation towards there is preparation towards race weekends in case I'm needed, but obviously it's quite a backseat until I'm potentially called up. So it's still busy, but quite a different style of busy.
We spoke, Tyler, that F2 testing returned. What were your big takeaways?
Well, I thought that not to go too hard on start making predictions about who's going to win the title, because it's testing and it's such a specific track as well, because Bahrain is mainly straights. But Carlin are looking seriously competitive. I think they had a very strong season last year, but not many people noticed them too much, because I feel that TimTams and Daruvula put themselves in positions to win a lot of points or get themselves in podiums, but not necessarily always making sure that they maximise weekends. So even though I'm sure that Oscar probably ended up battling TimTams and Daruvula a lot more than maybe most drivers, I feel that they didn't maybe get the most out of their car and the most points that they could have. This year, they got a new lineup. They got Sargent, they got Lawson. It's going to be really interesting with them. And they look really quick over the course of the entirety of testing. And I hope for their sake that they are as strong as they look, because they're such a big team and they have sort of struggled last few years. So yeah, it'd be good to see them get back to the top. But the one thing to keep in mind about them is that they are usually quick around Bahrain. So I think once you get to the mid-season testing in Barcelona, that's when you truly get to see them. But they're a strong team to watch. I think Daruvula, I think he probably is maybe odds-on favourite at the moment in terms of to win the title, solely based on the fact that he's experienced and he's in the PREMA winning machine that Oscar knows so well about. So if they can keep that level as high as they are in both F3 and F2, I think that Daruvala's got a massive chance. Apart from that, Fittipaldi's back after his injury in Jeddah last season, so that's nice to see him back. And then finally, in terms of the laps, it was Frederick Vesti who put the most amount of laps in, and he's a driver who needs to have a big season. He's still a Mercedes junior. But he is a rookie now in Formula 2. So there's a few drivers that have come into this season. There's sort of a transition year. A lot of the drivers that have been there for 2 or 3 years, like Guan Yu Zhou, like Dan TimTams, have sort of moved out now. So you've got a new breed of drivers coming in. So it'll be very, very exciting, but it's going to be really difficult to call, I feel. Yeah,
it feels like a bit of a changing of the guard with so many rookies coming in. And you don't really expect a rookie to go in and win in their debut season. Only the best of the best do that, Oscar? Speaking of which, Floris, where do you rank Oscar? You have been doing F1 feeder series for some time and you're very, very aware of the quality of drivers. How do you rank Oscar as one of the ones from the feeder series world of the last few years?
Yeah, I've been doing this for 3 years. I started it in 2019. So I think that's all 3 Oscar's championship years. But what's the thing that stood out to me is probably that he won. Sorry that I'm talking about you while you're here, but that you won 2 championships as a rookie, and that's what not a lot of drivers do. Like I think maybe only George Russell and Charles Leclerc won F2 and F3 in a row as a rookie. So that's something that stands out. Because F2 and F3 every year, it doesn't matter what you do, you start over. So when you win F3, that's all nice. But then you go to F2, it's a different car, different downforce, etc. So when you adapt that quick, like I think it didn't even take Oscar like 1 round. It was straight on the pace. So that's a very important part, I think. And also, which something I heard Alex Jakes say, is that he has a very measured approach in his driving and his preparation, which also culminates in being very, very like more like a silent assassin, like a very, very consistent, and that's a quality. You know, it's all cool when you excel and win a race, but if the next race you have NF, you probably won't be champion. So that consistency also is very important, and that's why I have very high hopes for his F1 future. And I have no doubt, every time it's going to be new, every time you move up, it's going to be new, but I have no doubt he will do well.
Not so silent assassin in Abu Dhabi, though, Oscar, winning the title, then going straight into a bit of a crazy overtaking fest. What happened there? You were so serene all through the year, you get the title in the bag, and then were you just letting loose at last?
It wasn't letting loose on purpose, put it that way. I had another good start in race 2, I would say, and then tried to pass Liam into turn, whatever it's called now, turn 5, I think. I think that corner, especially when you're overtaking, it really sucks you in because it's so wide on entry now that I guess I just overestimated how much grip I would have and how much speed I was carrying, and made a bit of a mess of that. And then the incident with Yuri and Nasani. To be honest, I was focusing on Yuri, and I thought I was just racing Yuri, and Roy came in pretty fast and pretty late, but he made the corner, and so I put my hands up for that one, and it was very good timing for all of that to happen. But I think it all kind of stemmed from that first that turn 5 incident with Liam. I lost a whole heap of momentum down that massive straight, and I think I got to the end of that straight in already 11th or 12th. So was just a moment. I knew that I could risk it, obviously, because there was nothing left to lose. Wasn't my finest moment, put it that way.
I remember after the first sprint race when you won the championship, I remember thinking in the press conference, what shall I ask you? Because I was thinking, is this the last chance I'm going to get to speak to you as an F2 driver? And I thought, I know how F2 drivers are, because I remember when Nick De Vries won the title, he had an entire round in Abu Dhabi, and I think he got points finish in every race before then, and then he DNF'd all those races. And I was just thinking, I know Oscar's been like really calculated all season. There's no way he's going to still be like really serious about it. He's just going to try and go for it. So I remember thinking, I've got to ask you serious questions. But I was just thinking, once you won it, was it like, oh, okay, just not do what you want, but like just have fun in a different way?
A little bit. I mean, it was a very different approach for that sprint race, I guess. And I think with the format, the way it was last year, that was kind of just the way it kind of worked out in every weekend, regardless. So I guess qualifying at the front every weekend, usually meant for me, sprint race 1 was quite literally just a matter of finishing in the top 10 so that, you can bank the points for sprint race 2. But since I already had 10 points from finishing 3rd in race 1, and I knew that, if I, basically that I could kind of do what I wanted in sprint race 2, and, it wasn't going to affect my starting position for the feature race. So that, regardless of the championship and stuff, that was, I guess, kind of always a bit of a strategy throughout the year that I just never really got to use because, well, I say unfortunately, very sarcastically, I was always starting at the back of the top 10 for sprint race 1 because of qualifying. So it was a bit of a case of, I've already got my points in the bag and the championship in the bag. So, might as well try and get as many positions as I can. And, I wasn't trying to do anything crazy, but And I knew we were quick from race 1, but yeah, it kind of just didn't work out that way. And I think for the feature race, you know, it was I'd say quite surprising how much pressure I still put on myself to win that feature race. Like I still went into that thinking, you know, I really, really want to win this feature race. Like this, probably the same, if not even more than the feature races I'd won before that. Because I was like, you know, my last race in F2, the last feature race, you know, I want to make kind of one final statement and one last win kind of thing. So I actually put quite a lot of pressure on myself for that last race to make sure I got the job done, and we did. So that was great. But yeah, that sprint race too was, you know, there wasn't really any consequences to that, of course, minus a grid penalty for the feature race, which I avoided. So that was good. But yeah, I think with that format, there was kind of a race without consequences in that sense. So yeah, made the most of it.
Must be difficult for you to put your hands up when you already had one hand with a trophy already there for the season. This year, quite different though. Not so much racing. You've mentioned already a lot of testing instead, likely a lot of testing. When was the last time you had a year like that?
Never really. You know, the last time I had a year without racing, or without any planned racing anyway, was before I'd started motorsport full stop. So, you know, we're talking about 12 years ago now. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird dynamic, because, you know, it is a bit weird to, I guess, sort of have all these successful years and then just stop for a year. Of course, I'm still busy in the background with other things, being on the sim and, you know, still attending all the races. But it's certainly a bit of a mindset switch to, you know, just doing some testing here and there, and you know, not actually doing any racing. So it's a first for me really, and I'm still I guess getting used to it. And yeah, I mean, hopefully you know, the first part of the season goes well for Alpine, and you know, we get some good results on the board, and you know, hopefully it's enjoyable to watch, at least if I can't drive.
Floris, we know this year with this new mandate from Formula One teams to have some drivers, some test drivers, test appearances in the free practice sections. Do you know anything about, I'm going to ask Oscar this afterwards, but do you know anything about which drivers are going to be jumping in the F1 cars for these free practice sessions throughout the year?
No, not really. You know, you have there's a lot of reserve drivers, of course, test drivers. Maybe we can, maybe we'll see Schwartzman at Red Bull. There are a lot of candidates, probably Yuri or Liam. So I'm actually super excited, and I think it's a really smart move by Formula One. And I think, or at least I hope, we'll see more of those weekends. Now, make it mandatory to do half of them. You know, if it's the same for everyone, it doesn't matter. Nobody is being disadvantaged by it. So I say, let's, you know, let everybody do them like 10 weekends or something. And
Oscar, I said I was going to ask you, do you have these conversations this early in the season to say you're going to jump in it? Presumably you are going to jump in the car at this race, or do you have a say in which rounds you'd be attending them anyway? Do you have a say in which rounds you'll be racing in or driving in?
Well, I mean, it hasn't been confirmed that I'm doing these FP1s. Obviously, given, I guess, my sort of status at Alpine now as reserve driver, I would like to think they would be me. But I think, you know, just thinking logically, you know, a lot of the teams will probably, you know, firstly, for the sake of the young drivers coming into the tests, it's probably going to be at a track that the young, you know, the drivers know. I guess for all the guys racing in F2, because it is mostly going to be F2 guys, I suppose, probably, I guess, preferably not on a weekend that they're also racing, or you could look at it as an extra practice session for them. So that could go either way. But also for the teams, you know, firstly, their race drivers probably don't want to give up any practices at tracks where they feel they need the practice a lot. So, you know, if I was to guess, it'd probably be at a track that's, you know, tested at quite a lot throughout all categories. So, you know, if I was to guess, Barcelona seems like a very good candidate for a lot of these teams. And so, yeah, I think that kind of makes the most logical sense for me. And, you know, you only get, is it an hour or 90 minutes now for FP1? You know, regardless, it's still a short session and not much time to get used to it. So, yeah, I think it'll probably be at European tracks where, you know, firstly, the teams don't need quite as much data to gather from the race drivers, and where the young drivers are comfortable driving. And, you know, for a lot of these guys, it's going to be a first experience, I guess.
You've jumped in the F1 car now. How much of a difference?
It's a massive difference. Yeah, enormous. You know, I think even if you just look purely at the lap times, you know, you can kind of get a bit of a grasp of the difference. So I can't remember which track it was, but I think it was during my F3 season. So 2020, they did the speed comparison between F1, F2, and F3 of the three onboards. And I think F2 to F3 was about 4 seconds different. And then F1 was like another 12 seconds quicker than F2. So, you know, even if you just take Barcelona, that's, you know, the magnitude of time difference is 3 times more. So that says quite a bit, I guess. And, you know, in terms of top speed, it's not a huge difference from F1 to F2. Like Baku, we were getting up to, I think it was 330 k's an hour. Same at Monza, which is the rev limiter. And, you know, and in F1, it's, well, from the testing I've done, it's been a very similar top speed. It's mainly just the downforce and the braking, which is related to the downforce, but just the amount of downforce you've got, the braking capability and the high speed performance is just, you know, a completely another world to anything I've ever driven. And so, yeah, I would say those are the two main areas rather than the power, I guess. And, you know, I think in every category you step up, you kind of get used to the power jump the quickest. It's just when you've got quite big philosophy changes in terms of driving and just car behavior, it's that generally takes a bit longer to get used to, I'd say. But it's, yeah, a massive step up from any kind of car.
Now, Tyler, we expect Oscar to be stepping up, or we certainly hope Oscar to be stepping up in 2023, if not in a Haas in 2022, who knows? But we expect Theo Pourchaire will be stepping up in 2023. We've had a whole podcast with Josh Revel talking about our expectations for 2022 in Formula 2. Do you have any title favourites yourself?
I mentioned that I'd say odds on at the moment, Deruval is probably slightly the favourite based on his position as being experienced and in the PREMA team. But Pourchaire seems to be everybody's favourite, seems to be the fan favourite for this year. I think being the youngest winning driver in F2 history helps. I think there seems to be some sort of massive fanfare about, I think, him as a personality as well. I think the fact that he is young, I think there's a lot of, you know, the younger fans share that in enjoying to see someone that young. And I think that, yeah, he actually does have a really good shot. I think the biggest challenge for him this year will be mental, the mental challenge, because Oscar mentioned it a bit earlier about the schedule changing. It's a really, really big deal this year. You know, last year, if you screwed up that first sprint race, you pretty much no points in the second one, and then all that pressure is lumped on that feature race. This year, if Pourchaire can get the qualifying right in the same vein that Piastri did towards the end of the season, then it makes life so much more easy for you, because even if you don't get points in that first sprint race, all you got to do is just relax, take your time, and, you know, do better in the feature race. And because there's no second sprint race, it's not as much pressure on that final feature race. So it helps, I think, even though there's more rounds, the fact that there's less races every weekend will take pressure off a bit for those drivers. So yeah, qualifying is going to be massive. And I think Pourchaire is definitely, on a one lap basis, definitely one of the quickest in there.
No pesky Australian to start taking all the pole positions this year, so he's got a much better chance. We've got a whole bunch of questions that we wanted to ask, but as much as we could ask them all day, F1 Feeder Series isn't for us, it's for our audience, and we want to make sure that you all feel involved. So we're going to move on. onto the part of the podcast where our viewers and listeners have their say with hashtag AskF1FS. And if this is your first time watching or listening, you can get involved by using the hashtag AskF1FS on Twitter, joining our Discord and using the podcast questions channel, or simply commenting on our YouTube videos and asking whatever is on your mind. I'm afraid Floris and Tyler, it's going to get a little bit quiet on your end, but you'll have to just sit back and relax and listen to that Australian accent answer quite a lot of these questions. But please feel free to jump in when appropriate if you have any follow-ups yourselves. And I'm going to start now with AS19 Alex, who's asked via Twitter, Oscar, how does your weekly life look now without any racing to keep yourself occupied? You mentioned already some of the simulator work going to the F1 weekends, but anything else on a week-to-week basis, not on the weekends?
So I guess because the season hasn't started yet, it's quite a regular weekly life at the moment, I suppose. So for the last couple of years, I still live 20 minutes away from Enstone, and somebody is ringing my phone.
With the Stein on the phone.
It could be Gunter Steiner. Go and pick it up.
No, I think it's someone at the intercom. So it's probably Kaio who's locked himself out, but that'll teach him.
I would like to point out to anybody who was watching the podcast or was listening to go back and watch Kaio Pillette. This is Kaio Pillette in F3, who had a little cameo crawling behind Oscar earlier in the podcast. I know Tyler laughed and spotted that as well. So you are living with Kaio this year again, right?
Correct. Yes. So we live, very close to Enstone, and we've been living close to Enstone for a couple of years now. And we go to the factory at Alpine pretty much Monday to Friday. So we normally get there at sort of 9:30 in the morning, and train in the gym for the morning, have lunch, and then either do some more training or do whatever in the afternoon. Depends on the day, I guess. But so for me personally, I spend a lot of time at the factory, and a lot of especially when I was in the academy as well, a lot of the academy guys spend the time there as well. So that hasn't really changed for me at the moment. I guess once the season kicks in, I basically will have the same schedule as an F1 driver, just I won't actually be driving. So especially for the flyaway races, I still need to go to the track on Thursday, be there for media day, and be available. So that side of things will still be very, very busy. But in a weekly life, it's basically go to Enstone Monday to Friday, have my weekends off. Usually that involves seeing my girlfriend, because as I looked at my calendar this year, there's not a lot of weekends left. And that's pretty much my life without racing, I would say.
Okay, well, I'd love to follow up, but we've got so many questions that I want to get through as many as possible. This one comes from Harry, again on Twitter, and he wants to know, have Alpine or any other teams started talking about a possible 2023 drive yet? You should be on the grid this year, he says, but definitely should be next year.
No, there hasn't been any talk about 2023 yet. I think it's still far too early to sort of have those discussions. I guess once the season starts, then we'll get a good idea of the pecking order for the year, and who's performing and who's not performing in terms of both teams and drivers. And I suppose the regular silly season is around the summer break, so I expect that a lot more information will I guess kind of come to everybody around that time, myself included. So it's almost a little bit of a waiting game at the moment. Obviously I've still got these tests in last year's car with Alpine to prove myself further. All my simulator work with Alpine, and just generally trying to improve myself still off the track. I can, that there's still areas I can improve, but in terms of racing performances, I've kind of got my runs on the board, so to speak, in terms of race results, and it's a bit of a waiting game in that aspect. So no, I don't have any information about 2023.
I will follow up on this one though, actually. we spoke last year and we spoke about this different format, which is now gone. Do you think you might have suffered from that? Because that was a conversation a lot of people had with regards to driver selection, that the way that the season progressed last year was so difficult that by the time silly season had come around, F2, you were looking strong, but you weren't notching up 4 feature race wins in a row. Do you think that might have had something to do with the decision to not be on the grid this year? Do you think if it was more standard, you might have had more of an opportunity?
I think it was probably one of a few factors. I'll be honest and say it certainly didn't help my case, I guess. And that was the same for the whole F2 grid. And the reality is I knew after Silverstone, which was round 4, that my chances of getting on the F1 grid were not much higher than 0. So that was, quite a hard moment to take. So, halfway through the season. So I don't think it helped, definitely. But I think another pretty big factor is obviously it's such a big regulations change for F1 this year that, I think understandably the teams, all of the teams wanted experience. And I guess there's also the case that it's such a new philosophy that maybe a young driver that's not been in F1 could, it's almost the perfect time for them to jump in. You could look at it both ways, but of course, I think the answer is kind of in the fact that they've changed back to 2 races per weekend and more weekends. I think that kind of answers the question itself. But yeah, I don't think last year's format it certainly didn't help, I would say.
Yeah, I know Floris, Tyler, and myself all agree that going back to the 2 races weekends and the longer seasons a little bit better than what we had last year's welcome return. We'll move on to Glickenhaus Enthusiast by Discord, who wants to know what your opinion is. And I didn't ask the question on the PREMA tax. So do drivers get as big an advantage from being at PREMA as people say?
Well, no, I don't think so. But I think, obviously in F3, PREMA are very, very strong. But I think what a lot of people, particularly people outside of PREMA, I guess, kind of don't really, I don't know, maybe they do think about it, but it's kind of a bit of a chicken and the egg effect. Obviously, I think the first year of this new F3, PREMA's lineup was Schwartzman, Daravala, and Armstrong, which I would say for that year was the strongest lineup. And, I think all 3 of those guys are incredibly strong drivers. And I think that's part of I think that's part of it. I think because PREMA do a good job, they attract the best drivers, which then, kind of just levels everybody up at the same time. So, I think if you look at F2 last year, for example, I think Robert and I was a very strong pairing there. And so, yeah, I'm certainly not saying that PREMA don't do an incredible job. They definitely do. But that is all. It's all down to hard work, and again, they attract the best drivers as well. So I think a lot of the drivers that have been with PREMA throughout the years, okay, maybe they wouldn't be winning quite as much without PREMA, but I think they'd still be certainly near the pointy end of the grid. So I think that's my answer on that.
So you suggesting that you are PREMA are choosing you rather than you're going to PREMA saying, look how good I am?
Well, I think for me, and this is just a stat, like I have a championship that was won without PREMA, and okay, PREMA weren't in that championship, but I still, I guess this is for me personally, I don't think I won everything because of PREMA. Obviously in F3 it was useful, but I think another important thing, I guess, to note is that I never lost to a teammate in junior categories. So, I guess with PREMA, it does help. But you've still got your own teammates as competition, and because PREMA are such a good team in particular, they attract the best drivers. So it's a bit of a tricky one, and of course people outside of PREMA are of course going to be wanting to go to PREMA, I suppose, because they are, I think, the best team out there. But I think I don't think there's much more to say really.
Floris can attest to the fact that even on the background side of things, PREMA are very professional. They're the one who always send the press release out, right after qualifying, right after the races for every championship. Floris, eh?
Yeah, they are the most professional team at every level, I think, and it's also kind of unfair to say that a champion is only a champion because he's at PREMA. Because, like Oscar said, you also have to beat your teammates. And normally at PREMA, those are very good drivers. So even if at the beginning of the season that PREMA is the fastest team, that you're not automatically champion. It's not that easy. So and also an average driver won't turn into a great driver when he's driving a PREMA. It's not that easy, I think.
Great teammates, and we'll going to miss Oscar's cameos on Robert Schwartzman's TikTok, so a little bit less singing and dancing this year. This one, I don't know who his favourite driver is. This person's called Piastri F2 champ. What was the morning after winning the F2 championship like? Had it sunk in by then, or has it sunk in at all yet?
Yes, it has definitely sunk in, and to be completely honest, I think I'm already focused on being reserve driver now, and that's kind of, I guess, in the past. But the morning after, I think because of the way the championship was kind of playing out, it was, of course, not guaranteed, but the points gap was kind of opening slowly throughout.
You must know, though. I mean, I hear drivers say this all the time. I didn't know it was going to. Like, you must know at some point. We saw it from like 3 rounds before.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I knew things were going well, clearly, and I was confident that we could keep those results coming in. To be honest, didn't really expect 5 pole positions in a row, but hey ho, I'll definitely take that. So the morning after, well, firstly, I was very tired because we'd had Saudi and Abu Dhabi back to back, and Saudi was, well, both weekends were very hot, but Saudi was very hot and a very physical track as well. So yeah, I was pretty knackered by the end of those 2 days and 2 weeks, and then I had the F1 test on the Tuesday. So I kind of had to recover a bit to get ready for that. And yeah, I think it had sunk in. It was much easier for it to sink in compared to F3, for example, because F3 really went down to the wire, and F2, I think even I could see that it was going well, and I just needed to kind of keep doing what I was doing, and it was going to be relatively straightforward. I certainly couldn't be complacent. And because that's when stuff starts going wrong. But I knew that I was really confident that we were quick and could win races and get pole position. So I think that was good. And then I think just the way the season was kind of unfolding, it wasn't really until after Saudi where I got quite comfortable, because the point, I think that I can't remember what the points gap was now, but it was. Yeah, Robert basically had to win everything at that point, and I knew with the format that it was going to be pretty freakish if he had pulled that off, and that was bearing in mind if I scored 0 points. So I think I kind of had that week after Saudi to, I guess, think about it a bit more. But of course, I think my result proved in Abu Dhabi that I certainly didn't let my guard down and finished it strongly.
Did your relationship sour with Robert at all with that, or you guys just knowing how the season was unfolding that it wasn't overly competitive?
I certainly wouldn't say it was sour. Of course, with any driver, you want to beat your teammates, and there's always that competitive nature, and we're all here to win, and we're all here fighting for our futures. So, of course, nobody likes to lose. and I certainly don't like to lose.
You don't even know how to lose. You've won so much.
It wasn't sour at all between Robert and I. We worked together really well throughout the year, and I think we both came to the understanding of the easiest way to try and win a championship for yourself is to help the team and make the car as good as possible as well, because that kind of removes a lot of other candidates if you can make your car better than everyone else's. So I think we both kind of came to that understanding and worked together really well last year. So yeah, there was certainly no sour feelings with Robert.
Well, I chose Robert as my favourite for last year, so thanks for screwing that up, Oscar. This one comes from Into the Fernandaverse via Discord, and I'm going to actually ask this to Floris, then Tyler, and then you, Oscar. Any Australian drivers coming up the ranks that you're keeping your eyes on? Oscar, you were obviously the candidate to start with. Floris, any other Australian drivers that you're aware of and keeping an eye on?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think we got there's a couple in the lower ranks. I think you have Marcos Fleck. I think he's a good one. Maybe there are even more Kiwis than Australians. I don't know, but that's the one that comes up with me. Yeah.
Anybody from you, Tyler?
Yeah, Jack Doohan.
I've heard he's all right.
I was really hoping that Floris was going to forget that one. I did. I was going to have to really reach for somebody. Floris is right in saying about New Zealand drivers. There do seem to be quite a decent amount of Kiwis at the moment, but yeah. I think that there seems to be a very steady stream of Australian drivers. It seems as if it's like Webber, Ricciardo, Piastri. I'm sure someone will follow from you. So when you're 30, Piastri, you'll be showing someone into the ranks. But yeah, I think Jack Doohan is, in my mind, I think he's probably an outsider for the title. I think this year he gets things right. I think the way that he conducted himself at points last year was of sort of a title, of the behaviour of a title challenger. I think just Hauger had a bit too much for him, and I think, especially within the PREMA this year, I think he'll probably have a bit too much for someone like Doohan again. But yeah, Doohan's a really good driver, and I think that in terms of the Australians keeping it coming, it's surprising that you've got more Australians, I think, at the moment of pure skill than you have like Brazilians, for example, which is quite surprising. But yeah, there's a good amount of talent coming from down under.
I totally forgot James Wharton.
I was about to say, actually, I was going to ask if Oscar wanted to shout out James Wharton too.
Yeah. Sorry, Oscar.
No, that's okay. I think, yeah, the first two that I guess came to mind is obviously Jack, being in F2 now, and I think he had a very strong season last year, and I think quite clearly much improved from some of his previous years, which was nice to see. So yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes this year in F2. Obviously, a big step up from F3 to F2, but Virtuosi is certainly in the top couple of teams, I would say. So he's in a good spot on the grid, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Yeah, James Wharton as well, obviously a newcomer to single seaters. Met him well. He used to race karts back in Australia when I was still racing there. So I've known him. He's obviously quite a lot younger than me, but I've known of him for a while and met him a few times now. And yeah, I think some of his performances in the UAE and F4 were very strong. I think he had some up and downs, but that's only natural at the beginning of your single-seater career. I know all too well about that. So yeah, I think those two are really the two that I can really see. I know Floris mentioned Marcus Flack, and to be honest with you, I don't really know much about Marcus. I've heard his name floating around a little bit, but yeah, I think Jack and James are in good spots on the grid, have won races already, and yeah, so I'm interested to see how they go.
I think it's very interesting to note that Oscar did not jump to the defence of Brazil and defending his housemate right there when Tyler was absolutely slagging the Brazilian drivers off. Well, I'll let you off, and we'll go with this final question before we've got 10 quick-fire questions to round the podcast up. This is one from Dan, and he wants to know who your title favourites are for F2 this year.
That's a very good question. For me, I think I agree. Jahan is, I think, on paper, very high up there in the list. Obviously, he's with PREMA, and I know how good that car is. And you know, he's in his third year of F2, so got a lot of experience. I'm interested to see how Hauger goes. He could be, you know, maybe he'll do the same as me. I don't know. But yeah, I think his F3 season last year was very, very strong. So we'll see. And I mean, we won't really know anybody's true pace until the first race weekend. But I think, yeah, the two PREMA guys, you definitely can't count them out. I think Porsche, obviously, certainly up there as well. You know, I think last year he showed, you know, moments of brilliance. Obviously, Monaco was a big highlight. I think for him, I guess it'll be important to be consistent. And also, you know, it's part of it will be how strong ART is, I suppose. I think Lawson as well at Carlin is another really strong candidate. Obviously, you know, Carlin a very strong force, and you know, I think Liam is a very good driver, very fast driver. Obviously, very skilled at wheel-to-wheel combat and you know, quite aggressive. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, he had a few good moments last year as well. And you know, I think again, similar to Teo, his, you know, I guess consistency is going to be their biggest thing. And yeah, obviously Logan as well. Obviously a rookie for this year, but I know firsthand as a teammate, you know, how strong he is, especially over one lap. So yeah, I think they're probably my candidates, I would say. Obviously Doohan at Virtuosi as well. I know that car's strong. I know Jack's a good driver. So I can't really pick a clear one out of those sort of 5 or 6, but I mean, you've got Yuri at High Tech again. They showed moments of brilliance last year as well. So there's a lot to choose from, really. But yeah, if I was going to pick one, I'd probably say on paper, Jahan has a lot of things going for him. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's very, very tight between those sort of 5 or 6 guys.
Just quickly, you're actually quite excited to watch it from the sidelines this year, not to be involved, because you've raced against most of that grid. Will you find it actually thrilling to watch it without knowing that your future is on the line?
Probably, yeah. Like, I mean, F2 racing is always exciting, and this is quite an ironic statement. Well, maybe not ironic, but an interesting one. When I was racing in F3, you know, one of the highlights of the weekend was watching in the truck the F2 races, because there was always chaos and they were always exciting. And then I got to the end of the F3 season, especially after I'd won, bearing in mind that I knew I couldn't do F3 again, even if I wanted to, and kind of came to the realization that, oh, I'm about to join all that chaos and fun. And so, you know, this is good, but obviously F2 is very chaotic by its nature. So I am certainly looking forward to watching F2 because it's always exciting. And you know, knowing the guys on the grid and racing against them, you know, it makes it a little bit more personal, I suppose, as well. So yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how the season unfolds.
Is there someone you mentioned you like your favorites? Is there someone you're rooting for? Maybe the PREMA guys, or?
You know, I think obviously I spent 2 years with PREMA, so you know, I would really like to see the PREMA guys do well. There's also obviously Jack in the Alpine Academy now, and you know, fellow Aussie compatriot. So it'd be nice to see another Aussie doing well. But I'm not going to name names. I think, you know, those 2 affiliations are enough. But yeah, I think, yeah, you know, of course, if I could see a PREMA driver win or an Alpine driver win, those would be my first picks, I suppose.
You're not an F1 driver yet, but you've got the F1 political answers down to a T. You've got that sorted. We're going to run out of time, but to make sure we try and get as many questions in as possible, as I mentioned, we've got 10 quick fire questions. So just short answers. If you want to elaborate a little bit, then feel free. But yeah, I've deliberately picked them to give possibly one-word answers. So let's start with this one from Amber. And she stresses it's a very important question. Do you have a favorite animal like otters, maybe?
Not really, and no, it's not otters. Yeah, I don't know what my favorite animal is, but not otters.
Not a honey badger either.
No, not a honey badger. Like probably, I don't know, probably something like a lion or a tiger or something. I mean, if I'm going to be fully patriotic, then a kangaroo or a koala or an emu. But yeah, I don't know. It's not otters though.
Or a drop bear. We've also got this one from Star. Who was your favorite driver growing up?
Good question. And yeah, I mean, Mark was the. I started watching. I know there's a quick fire questions, but I started watching F1 in like 2009 was the first season I properly watched. So when Braun came in, obviously Mark was the only Aussie on the grid at that point, so I was kind of naturally going for him. And yeah, obviously, then joined by Daniel, so I'm obviously going to support the Aussies. But I think watching Lewis has been, nothing short of spectacular and a very good role model. Obviously, Verstappen as well now. And yeah, so growing up, Mark and Daniel really are the two.
This one from Arya, and you have to not toe the company line here because they're asked, which is your favorite livery on the grid this year except Alpine?
Ooh, except Alpine. I think this is where I put in the line for legal reasons. I'm not allowed to subject. I don't know. I think the Ferrari looks nice.
The Haas looks really good, right?
Yeah, nice try, Jim. Yeah, I think the Ferraris. I mean, it's just nice seeing all these different shaped cars on the grid, to be honest. But yeah, the Ferrari looks nice. I obviously think the Alpine looks nice.
We can go with Ferrari. I agree as well. I'm not the biggest Ferrari fan usually, but this livery looks absolutely spectacular. So I'll let you off with that. Tay asks, does pineapple belong on a pizza?
No.
That's the wrong answer, unfortunately. This one's slightly different from favorite driver, but which driver did you look up to while growing up? This one comes from TFDASG. Really rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I think when I was first watching, I supported Mark, but and I hope you take no offense to this, but obviously Vettel was winning everything at that point, won the 4 World Championships. So I was supporting Mark, but Vettel was doing most of the winning. I think now that I understand more about racing, though, I would say Lewis mainly. I think the way he goes about things on and off the track is, quite exceptional. And I think the end of last season, the way he kind of handled all of that, especially immediately after the race and the post-race interviews, was nothing short of, remarkable. Like, I was really impressed with that, because I certainly wouldn't have been able to stay so calm. But yeah, I think Lewis, mainly because he's been so successful, but I guess, he's put himself in the right spot at the right time. Mercedes clearly believe he's the man for the job because they keep re-signing him. So yeah, I think Lewis is probably my answer.
This one from Jen. What's your butter to Vegemite ratio?
I don't really eat Vegemite that much. Like, I don't mind Vegemite. I'll eat it if it's there, but you can never have too much Vegemite. I take that back. It's very easy to put too much Vegemite, and I think especially people outside of Australia that don't have any experience with it often forget how strong it is or don't understand how strong it is. So you just need a small layer of Vegemite.
This might answer the next question as well then. Mads wants to know, Vegemite or TimTams?
TimTams.
They also want to say, just, I know it's a rush, but side note, they brought TimTams all the way to Jeddah to get them to Oscar, but unsuccessfully. So unfortunately, you could have some TimTams brought to you. This one comes from Sam. When you play Mario Kart, who is your go-to character?
To be honest, I haven't played Mario Kart in ages, but I can't remember who I used to pick. I think I used to play Mario Kart on the Wii when way back in the day, like at least 10, probably even more years ago. And I think it was like Koopa Trooper and Dry Bones that I used to pick, but that was only because they used to have the best bikes available or the best karts available. So it was all for performance reasons. So that was the sole reason as a true racing driver.
Indeed.
Yeah.
This one comes from both Vienna Forever and Law again. In Chasing the Dream, you had a bottle of shampoo on your bedside table. I've got to ask, why is it there instead of your shower?
I already had some in the shower, and that was, I guess, where I just put it in. That was my new bottle waiting to go. So yeah,
mystery solved. And this one finally from Law as well. Do you use your own GIFs when you text people privately?
Very, very, very rarely.
But you are aware they're there.
Yes, I'm more than aware that they're there. Yes. Depends on the circumstances, but especially when they first came out, yes, a little bit, and like especially in stuff like PREMA group chats and stuff, or stuff to do with racing people, yes. To other people outside of racing, no, because that just looks weird, I would say. But I have used them before, yes, just not very much.
Yeah, so the answer to that is when you win a race, you just text one to Robert like that, waving at him. Right, well, run out of time, unfortunately, and Oscar, as always, Floris and Tyler, that's all we have time for. Thank you for everybody watching and listening. If you'd like to have your question asked on a future episode, use the hashtag AskF1FS on Twitter. Drop any questions below if you're watching on YouTube, or let us know what questions you have on your mind on our Discord. Look for the podcast questions channel. And if you are watching on YouTube, dropping a like on the video, leaving a comment and subscribing to the channel all helps us out a lot. And if you're listening, leaving a review on the podcast platform you're listening on is greatly appreciated. Finally, check out f1feederseries.com for more feeder series insight, and follow F1 Feeder Series 1, F1FS Americas and F1FS Live on Twitter. You can find the links to all of those, plus the Twitter accounts for myself, Floris, Oscar and Tyler, in the YouTube description or the podcast show notes. Until next time, we have been the F1 Feeder Series podcast. Goodbye.